Hey guys, Jason here, and this is going to be a little bit of a different video. Today, I'm actually going to be showing you a whole bunch of different tips, tricks, and techniques on how to shoot short films by showing you a short film I made recently and then dissecting it to show you the techniques in action. I actually made this short film to be an entry for a scholarship, but the idea I had in mind ended up being way too long for the time limit of the scholarship, so I made a shortened version for the scholarship that was honestly worse and less coherent, and you guys are going to get to watch the full version right here. So I'm gonna show you the short film right now, and if you want to skip it and just get right into the tips, you can do that. There's a timestamp below, but you should probably watch the video first just to get a feel for things. Let's get into it. So obviously this is an amateur short film with family members instead of actors and no real budget at all. So if that offends you, you can click off right now and go do something else. But for those of you that are interested in similar budget filmmaking, you're going to want to stick around. And just in case you didn't quite get the storyline, which I really hope you did because that's kind of the whole point of the thing, it's basically about how getting on your phone throughout the day takes you out of the present to a place that isn't really real. So in the film, a guy wakes up, eats his breakfast, goes on his phone, and he's no longer in the real world, but instead he's in a digital, faker, emptier place. The same thing happens to a woman later on in the film when she's in the middle of a stairwell. She looks at her phone and she's taken out of the real world, and the last guy, played by me, sees the woman in the stairwell, and then he decides to break the pattern and actually be present while driving, which is honestly the most important place to be present. So I'm gonna go ahead and open up the video on my laptop here so I can go ahead and show and pause and dissect the video for you guys, and I'm gonna break down the techniques or the tips I used into several categories, and I'm just gonna talk. I don't really have a real script for this. I'm just gonna talk and explain how I got the shots and how I told the story and how I just put together this short film. Let's get into it. All right, so right off the bat, let's call this first tip setting up your environment. This is kind of crucial to anyone making a short film or anyone trying to tell a story through filmmaking. You need to set up where you're going with the film. So like here, I set up the environment or where things are happening with a shot of, panning into the flowers and the book on the little shelf thingamabob, and then it gives the mood of being in the morning, kind of a soft, peaceful vibe. And that's crucial no matter what kind of environment you're bringing the audience into, whether it's a short film that's, a James Bond kind of thing, an action movie, or a horror story, anything. You need to bring people into the environment. You can't just thrust them in the middle of the story with no context. So first tip, bring your audience into the environment. Moving on, actually, I'm just going to pause it right there because we're already at where we need to be. I promise I'm not going to pause every 2 seconds for the entire thing, but I'm going to call this one simple visual effect, because this shot right here, I honestly had no idea I could get this kind of shot with the equipment I had. I mean, okay, here, why don't you solve this yourself? I had a tripod, a camera, one lens, and my phone. How you get this shot? If I saw this kind of shot, I might guess like with an overhead rig, but then you can tell there's obviously some motion going on. It's smooth motion. It's not like shaking, but there's motion. So you might, not really know what's going on there. But what I actually did for this shot is I set up a chair at the foot of the bed that, the actor was sleeping on. I got on that chair and then I held the tripod out. I held onto the top of the tripod and had the end of it like braced on my stomach. I was holding it like this with the camera on the end. And the problem with that was that I couldn't see what the camera was seeing. I couldn't see the viewfinder. So with my phone, I actually connected it to the camera with Wi-Fi. I was looking through the phone's, looking through the camera, what it was seeing remotely through my phone, holding the tripod out way over the bed. And the fact that it was braced on my stomach kept it from like shaking too much. That's why all the motion was so smooth. And then I was able to see things through my phone's viewfinder and get that shot, remotely start things with my phone and remotely stop the thing at the end of the recording. And I would not have guessed that I was even able to do that before I set out to make this short film happen. So that's why I'm calling this tip simple visual effects.'t look at things from every possible angle, every possible way to get the shots that you want in your film. All right, so continuing on in this film, I'm literally pausing it every 2 seconds at this point, but that's just because I really like the beginning of this film. Not that the middle and end are bad, but just I really like the beginning. So I'm going to call this next tip angles, and this may seem obvious to some people and it may seem super like what to other people, but if you watch a Hollywood movie, if you watch any movie you'd see in theaters, or honestly any like budget short film or indie films, this is one of the things that can really bridge the gap between a super high budget and no budget at all. You want to take every single shot when you're taking a short film from every single angle possible. Even if it takes you 20 times as much time to film a sequence because you're taking it from 10 different angles, that's just 10 different more angles that you get to work with when you're editing. And the thing is, in a short film, you have the ability to put every single second of shots into the best possible angle. Like you have the ability, you have the power to put every single action in the best possible point of view. Like if you're watching something in real life in a room and you're watching something go down, you don't have the opportunity. You have one vantage point to see things. But the thing about filmmaking that's so crazy is you have the ability to move the camera instantly. And so in this sequence going on here, you see I switched views like 4 times. There's like 4 different viewpoints of this guy getting out of bed. And it honestly just adds depth and makes this film so much better. So definitely something to consider. Angles. You want more of those in your short films. All right, so continuing on the film, he gets out of bed, he walks down the hallway. 2 shots are going down the hallway. Hopefully that was, coherent enough that he turns a corner and it goes down the hallway. So I guess I'm going to call this next tip using your resources, because when I filmed this short film, I had 2 lenses. I had one camera, which is the G7, what I'm filming on right now, and I had 2 lenses, the f1.1 prime from Kamlan and the kit lens. For each specific environment or each specific shot, you need to use the lens that's going to work the best for that. So the kit lens, right? It's the lens that came with my camera, and it has its pros. It has autofocus. I can use the tracking focus feature. It has optical image stabilization, and it has a really nice wide field of view. You can see everything that's going on. And then the prime lens that I have also has its advantages. It has a super wide aperture, so you get that bokeh. And then beyond that, it lets in a lot more light, so there's less noise. You don't have to worry about shooting in darker environments as much, but obviously they both have their disadvantages with that. So this tip is basically just about using the best lens for the best scenario. And it's easy, trust me, it's easy to get lazy. Like halfway, 3/4 of the way through this film, I was just trying to shoot everything on the kit lens. Just keep that in mind from the beginning to the end, using the best lens, using the best resource for the best scenario. Trust me, it's one of the best decisions you can do, and it'll reap the most benefits in the long run. While we're in the kitchen here, I want to talk about color grading, and that's going to be the next tip. Color grading is very important, and there's actually two facets of color grading. The first is just correcting for technical errors. Like in this kitchen, I didn't set the white balance right, so I actually had, after I filmed the kitchen sequence of all the stuff going on in the kitchen, I had a ton of shots that were just completely way too warm, and literally if you looked at them, you would just be like, no, how are you gonna, what are you gonna do with that? But color temperature is one of those things that's super easy to fix in post. It's super easy to fix with color grading. So when I pulled these into my video editor, which has a really sucky color grading panel, even though it has a really sucky color grading panel, I was able to fix that right away. Just pull it into Filmora, open the color grading tab, and I was able to fix the color temperature right off the bat real quick, and everything looked fine after that. So that's the first use of color grading, just to fix technical errors like that, messing up settings in your camera or whatever. And then the other thing is just to convey your story, convey what's going on with the story. So in the beginning we had soft, peaceful color grading, and as you see, as we continue along here, give it a couple of seconds, we notice he's freezing. Give it a couple of seconds here, and now that he's frozen and in this gray room alternate reality that is not real, the color grading here is really cold, harsh, dramatic. It gives a completely different vibe from the beginning of the short film where we had that warm, peaceful morning sequence. So using color grading to convey your story or further your story is super important. So I guess while we're in this alternate reality gray room, I guess this is a good time to talk about soundscaping, and a lot of these tips I'm giving my own names to, and this is one of them. Soundscaping to me is building up kind of a sound map, a soundscape of the sound effects, the music, the background sounds to go along with the short film. And this is really important to me, and it's really important to the short film because it gives you the momentum to continue throughout the film. You may not notice it at first, but there's a lot of sound going on in the background. Remember the birds chirping in the beginning of the short film, the whoosh sound that's going to happen at the end of this gray room sequence, the really dramatic whoosh happening at the beginning of the gray room sequence, the space sound effects I found for continuing on through this gray room sequence. And then there's actually like a sound effect of people talking, just like indistinct chattering going on in the background of this gray room sequence. And all that stuff combined just brings momentum throughout this. And the way the music comes in and the way the music goes out and it comes back in just brings the story along. And continuing on, that's another example of color grading right there, by the way. I really crushed the blacks in that shot, which crushing the blacks and getting that effect in Filmora is actually way more difficult than it should be. I actually had to like bring the contrast down and then bring the brightness down because there's no tone curve in Filmora. It's like, why? It's a video editor, there should be, but like, stupid. I don't recommend Filmora. Alright, so I'm going to call this next tip pacing, and the reason I'm going to call it that is because this shot right here, this car driving off in the distance, leads up to a black shot and then kind of an abrupt beginning into the second half of the film. This is like the halfway point between the film, and I'm calling it pacing because you may not think when you're the one behind the director's seat, directing everything, putting everything together when it comes to a short film, you just want to get your thoughts out and get everything out and have this flow of creativity and just putting that flow of creativity into a video format and just, having it go constantly. But you need breaks. You need little stops. You need pacing. As the story goes along, you need to stop. And then you need a little more story, and then you need to stop. And then a little bit of story, and then you need to stop. Pacing. This is a really short film, a short film. So, I only needed one for this, but if you're watching like a really heavy movie, you'll have comic relief of some sort. Or honestly, if you're watching any movie of any type, there's going to be very similar pacing. It's not just going to be action with a conclusion. That's not how movies work. You need to have breaks. And so that's what this is. At first, when I filmed this shot of the car, driving off in the distance, I didn't really like it because it doesn't show the action as much as I wanted it to. It's honestly the only angle of a car driving you can get that has that little action. It's not much movement going on. But in this situation, I think it worked out great because it's a kind of peaceful, tranquil way to end that part of the video. And then 2 seconds later, once we get that black screen, boom, we start the next half of the short film. That was a really unsatisfying snap. That's better. This part was hard to film because my mom was having a hard time standing completely still. She wasn't the most convincing when it came to being frozen, but she was a good actress overall. Alright, so let's call this next thing establishing flow. Because by this time already, you've noticed... Okay, let's let that play a little bit more. Okay. By this point right here, there have been like 5 different angles of this stairwell. And I just want to say, it was hard to shoot in that stairwell because the reverb, the echo of the reverb from me putting my tripod down, like continues for like, I swear, 30 seconds. And that's going to show up in the audio from the camera. So that was annoying as heck. And but also, it was dark in there. It was really dark, and the kit lens was having trouble, so that's why I had to crush the blacks a little bit in the kit lens shots. But back to I'm getting off topic, that tangent. So talking about angles and talking about establishing flow here, there's a lot of angles of this stairwell in this sequence as part of the short film, and relating to the tip I had earlier on, which is called angles. Similarly, you want to use the angles that you have and the shots and the multiple ways of looking at things, perspectives, to enhance the flow of the story. One example I'll give of that is, if we go back a little bit, this shot right here. We're looking at my mom looking down at her through the bars of a railing, looking down at her from above her. And where this shot happens to come up in the flow or in the storyline of the story is right after we exit the gray room. So it brings us back into things, into the real things, but it also gives us a sense of location. Where is she? We're looking at her through this railing in a stairwell. It brings us back the sense of location while still keeping the focus on her. And then the next shot we transition back to looking at her straight on. And then I like this shot too because I'm blurry, I'm out of focus, but the fact that you hear the sound you heard before of the door opening and then you see a figure come in introduces me well before these more crystal clear sharp shots and me coming in. So yeah, flow. Establish it. Let's fast forward a little bit. There's nothing particularly interesting until we get to about here. Actually, this right here, these 2 shots right here, this is a kit lens, this is a prime lens. Kit lens, prime lens, kit lens, prime lens. And you can see the advantages of them, and you can also see how much better it makes this film to have both of these shots because, okay, let me just tell you, I had problems getting the key in the stupid keyhole. Like, I would go up there and hit everywhere but the keyhole, and I have to try like 3 times to get it in. I'm that uncoordinated, and the fact that it had these 2 shots made it easy to take care of that because, I could just cut out the in-between and have 2 separate shots separating things. Without 2 different shots, that would have been impossible. But also, it makes things more interesting to look at things from a different perspective. You wouldn't want to watch a movie where everything was shot from the same perspective. That would just be boring. So there you go. So, we're going to call this last shot telling a story. I feel like these tip names are getting more and more cliche the farther on we go, but this is honestly one of the most important ones, or something you need to be aware of, because when we talk about video or when we talk about short films, it's not that you're trying to just capture things and present them through video. That's a lot of old people's ideas of films, right? You give someone a smartphone, you tell them film something, they're just going to film it in a way that's basically just them trying to get what their eyes saw. But when you're telling a story with film, it's completely different from that. Like here, you wouldn't actually see or experience a flashback. But in video, and this is the only platform in which it's this visceral of a thing. Like in a book, you might read about a character having a flashback, but you're not going to hear it, you're not going to see it. When it's video, it's there, and you have to experience it. And so this tip is basically just about using the things that you have with video, using the techniques you have, like flashbacks, to further advance your story. And don't be afraid to get weird with it. Like, this whole idea of a gray room alternate reality obviously isn't real, but it helps present something. It's an idea, that it's this idea that we can pretty much all relate to about how technology, or at least maybe portable technology like our phones, just takes us out of the reality when not used properly. You get on a phone at like a family reunion and it's just taking you out of the present, and I don't blame you if you're getting on your phone at a family reunion. That's like the one place where it's acceptable, but like, You know what I'm talking about, taking yourself out of the present by getting on your phone. And when you get on your phone, you're taking yourself to a place that isn't real. Like all the voices going on in the background of the gray room shots in this short film, that was kind of trying to represent all the voices, you know, on your Twitter feed, all these people popping up on your Instagram, all these YouTube comments, or whatever the heck you're doing on your phone. They're not real. You're essentially frozen in real life. And I was just trying to represent that in that short film. And the point of this tangent is gray room is not a real thing, but because of video, I was able to represent it, hopefully, and communicate it effectively. I'm still questioning the entire storyline of this thing and whether it was communicated effectively, but hopefully, if all went well, you were able to get the intent or the meaning behind what I was trying to say. Boom. All right, so that's the end of the thingamabob. We're gonna call this last tip wrapping up, because this is the end of the story. This is where things get wrapped up. So there's actually a lot of stuff going on in the like the last 4 seconds of this video, and you may not notice it at first, but I closed the phone, I put it away. This shot of my head is kind of, you know, me doing the movement of putting the phone away in my pocket. I say nah, put my hands on the steering wheel. You actually hear the key in the ignition, you hear the engine start up, you hear the car drive away, and then you see the car drive away. Then black screen and a short message. That's quite a bit, I guess, in the last 5 seconds of this film. So yeah, last tip, wrapping up, use all the sound effects, use the music fading out, just use everything in your video playbook to wrap everything up. I feel like I really like the keys in the ignition sound effect that I got online, and I really like the engine starting up and the driving away. I really like this last shot. I think for me, I ended things in a pretty satisfying way. And I mean, for me, I'm definitely still an amateur filmmaker. I have 2 lenses. I have a budget camera. I'm still looking for, I don't even have a stabilizer, right? But I'm still trying to tell stories with what I got. And I think this is a pretty good way to end this particular one. So that's the last tip right there. Wrapping up your stories, wrapping up the video, the message you're trying to convey. And there it is. Stay present. Don't text and drive. Even if it wasn't for a scholarship, that's good advice. Hopefully you enjoyed this video and the short film. Again, I know the limitations of my gear, and I know it wasn't a professional short film you'd see anywhere important, but I did my best, and I'm just trying to help out other people with maybe less experience or equipment as me, if that's even possible. Thanks for watching. Definitely subscribe to AeriumTV, little red box down below. Drop your thoughts down below in the comment section, and I will catch you in the next video. Peace. You kind of want to just, get your thoughts out and just... Stupid motorcycle.